Mi wile open. Mi lon mi ilo tani li pali e ilo nasin. Ilo ni li ken lukin e toki pona li ken kama sona e nasin toki li ken poki e nimi. Mi kepeken ilo tawan ni. Mi kama sona e ante tempo pi toki pona to nasin nimi. So most of the rest of this talk is going to be in English, but hey everyone, ilo tani here. So, this past spring semester, I was taking a course on applications of linguistics, and my professor gave us an opportunity to apply and present at like an undergraduate linguistics conference with a little research project. And so I decided to make my project about Toki Pona. And what I was really interested in this time was applying a Toki Pona parser to real world data to see what kind of conclusions I could come up with. So today, I'll be talking about this project, some of my process, the findings, and also a few Tokipona tools I made along the way that you'll be able to use and I think are pretty cool. So just a quick overview. We're just going to be going over the research question and just what I'm looking at in general, then the process, which is like data collection, the parsing tool, aggregating all this, and the results. So there's a few words that I'd like to look at as case studies and some other conclusions. And at the end, I'll have a little time for Q&A or just like responding to some messages in chat. All right. Number one la, wile. So there are a few interesting Tokipono features that I wanted to look at. So first of all content words can function in any part of speech. And we know that the part of speech that a word takes is almost always determined by its position in a sentence, right? So in this first sentence, we have moku as a verb. It comes right after mi, which is the subject, and right before e, which marks the next word as the object. But in the second sentence, moku is a noun because it's the first word in the sentence, and it has to function as the sentence's subject. And this is really interesting because pretty much every Tokipona word can function like this, where you can have it as a verb or you can have it as a noun that's in the subject or object or in some prepositional phrase. Another interesting thing is transitivity. We know that when used in the verb position, all words can be transitive, which means that they have a afterwards, or intransitive, which means they don't. So the normal use of pona would probably be something like this, right? Lipu ni lipona, where the pona is just describing what the lipu is, describing a quality of the lipu. But if we add a direct object with a afterwards, it transforms this word into no longer referring to a quality of the subject, but rather the change that the object undergoes. And another thing is Tokipona is used in a few different mediums. So in my paper, I called this formal and informal Tokipona, where formal Tokipona is stuff that's written and edited and more planned out. So formal Tokipona would be things like Libu Tempo or the Utada Toki that Jan Lakuse covered, or Libu Kule, and various blog sites. And I want to give a big thanks to friends at Pokilapo for compiling all of this data because that made like this actual collection and parsing really, really easy. Second is informal Tokipona, which is more conversational. So that's Discord servers like Mapona pi Tokipona, where there's tons of output produced from a large number of people. And like given these two mediums, we can make a few hypotheses, right? Maybe planned and edited language is like more creative and people decide to transitivize a greater variety of words. Or maybe it's the opposite, right? Maybe to be the most understood, writers might use language or words that are easy for all readers to understand. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm looking at in this. So my research question is just this. In Tokipona, how does the distribution of words in different syntactic positions evolve across formal and informal contexts? And what do these phenomena reveal about language change as a whole? Yeah, Gana Asi just posted a link to the Pokilapo library. Um, cool. Uh, oh yeah, a few people have brought up in this gloss, I have a as TR for transitive. You could also analyze it as accusative or stuff like that. Yeah, that is like debatable. Okay, so the process. First of all, is just data collection, right? I used two specific corpora for this. So the first one for the informal corpus, I guess, would be Mapona pi Toki Pona, which has conversational text. And in here, we have 1.23 million Toki Pona sentences with 6.4 million tokens. So that's a lot of data that we can look at. And then in the Poki Lapo corpus, we have all of these online published works, and that's uh, over 500,000 tokens of Tokipona data. So there's a lot of stuff to look at here. So the first process is, or the first thing that we have to do, I guess, is sanitization. And this is basically taking the raw text data and turning it into some data that I can actually look at and parse and digest more easily. So let's say I send a message somewhere. This is English, mikama sona, right? Munkekan-san's Sona Toki Python library is really nice, and I used that for this stage of the process. We just take this and segment it into sentences and segment those sentences into words. And then Moon's tool allows us to score these sentences on whether or not they're Tokipona. And so that would filter out all these non-Tokipona sentences and just give us the sentence mi kamasona cleanly separated into words. Cool. Now, once I have the sanitization, I can go ahead and parse these sentences. And this is probably where I spent the most time on this project. So if I have a sentence, mi kama sona, and we feed it into this parser that I created will generate all the possible trees that correspond with a sentence. So let's look at, you can actually look at a demo of this at nasin.nimi.li. So if I head here, right, we can see that given a sentence, this parser will produce a bunch of different parses. And so we can see, oh, this first parse that is scored the highest is sina as a subject, and then ken ala as a negated preverb, and then the verb phrase, a transitive verb phrase right here, where toki is the head modified by pona, and then an object phrase with a marking a phrase io right here. And then we have another similar sentence right here. Um, Let's see, why is this sentence different from the previous one? This sentence is lower, but the reason that this sentence is not scored as highly is because it does something weird here. We have ala, in this case, ala modifies sona, right? We're saying not knowing. But in this case, sona is a preverb and ala is like a transitive verb to turn the thing into nothing, right? So this is less sensical. Than like this first parse. So um, a heuristic thing that I developed is able to rank all these parses and basically look at the best one that is most likely to be the like real parse that like a human would think is true. And the way this parser works, I think, is pretty cool. So I define a few sets of rules um, of how the language works. So this is a super simplified version where, oh, S is a sentence. And let's say that a sentence is composed of a phrase that's followed by li, that's followed by another phrase. And what's a phrase? Well, a phrase can either just be a lone content word, or it can be some phrase that's followed by a content word, which is like a modification. So if we apply this like little grammar to this sentence, yan pona di moku pona, it generates this tree over here. So we have the sentence, and the sentence is comprised of a phrase, and then li, and then another phrase. So this phrase on the left is using this third rule right here that says that a phrase is composed of another phrase and then a content word, and this content word is the pona. And then this other phrase right here is just a content word, which is yan. So using this like grammar definition, a tool called Nearly that I used is able to like take a string of tokens and then convert it into this hierarchical structure. All right, so after I do that, I choose a single parse and I look at each of these sentences and assign different parts of speech. So let's say that I get this parse out of mi kama sona, right? So first we look at mi. Mi is the head of a phrase, and it's the head of a phrase specifically in the subject position. So I tag that as a noun. Sona is also the head of a phrase, but instead of being in the subject position or the direct object position or so on, it's in the verb phrase. So I mark it down as an intransitive verb. And then kama is a preverb here, so I just mark that down as a preverb. Once I do that, I have all these tags, and then I just count however many times every word appears in each of these different parts of speech. And I'm a big fan of this next graph. So let's look at some of the results that came from applying this process. So this is a graph that, or chart rather, that I was able to create from the data from both of the corpora over all the time periods. So the way we read this is on the x-axis, we have the noun count. uh, how often is a word used as a noun. On the y-axis, we have the verb count. So how often is the word used as a verb? And for the purposes of this, a content word is considered a noun, a verb, or a modifier. So if it's neither a noun or a verb, it is considered a modifier. So up here, we have superverby words. So yo and pana are almost always verbs, very rarely used as modifiers, very rarely used as nouns. Down here, we have sina, me, and ona. So we have very nounish words. These are almost always used as nouns, never really in the verb position, and pretty rarely still, only around like 30% as modifiers. And we can kind of see some clusters starting to form here, right? So down here, we have like one, tu, and mute. So these are almost always used as modifiers, right? You would say yan mute, and it's much rarer to say yan ni li mute, those people are many, or yan wan or yan tu. These are much more likely to be used as modifiers. Then up here, we have like more verby words. We have words like alasa, lukin, pilin, wile, moku, moli. All of these are more likely to be used after li. And down here, we have more like nouny words. So these are words like kudupu, sitelen, nasin, tempo. Sitelen here is interesting because it seems to be used a lot more as a noun than it is as a verb. We have like akasi, sodi, pipi. All of these are around here. And we also have right here, this is more of a adjective used words. So like words like pona, sui, ike, nasa, all of these are going to be around here. And I think the reason they're around here and not more down here is because I consider any word after li to be a verb. So I would say, io ni li pona. I would mark that as a verb. And like io pona di don, that would be a modifier or an adjective, which brings it like in between verb and adjective, but very rarely used as a noun, right? Pona ni li sudi, that is usable and it does mean something, it's just much rarer. Uh, Yansuko asks, does this only include complete sentences? I also include interjections, where I consider like the head of an interjection its own kind of thing, and then all the stuff that comes after it, like modifiers or prepositional phrases, etc. So one case study that I wanted to look at that was interesting was luka and uta. So as we know, luka and uta refer to your hands and your mouth or your lips, or maybe like a limb, etc. And luka as a noun just refers to hands, but you can turn it into a transitive verb by using it in the verb position and adding a afterwards. And that means something like touch. And you can do the same thing with uta, right? If I say mi uta isina, it could mean like I kiss you or something like that. And let's take a look at this chart. So we can see, oh, Luca and Uta back in 2020 were used like maybe 12% or oh, actually let's look at this chart first. On the x-axis we have the verb count. So this is how often something is used as a verb. And then on the y-axis at y-axis we have how often it's used as a transitive verb. So specifically with an a phrase afterwards. So we have yo and pana are super duper high up here, right? Yo and pana are really used often as verbs. And when they're used as verbs, they're used as transitive verbs. Another word like lape is down here. Lape is used pretty frequently as a verb, like 60% of the time. But when it is used as a verb, it's almost always intransitive. You would say mi lape rather than like mi lape e yan lili. And we can see lukan uta are right here, where they're used sometimes as verbs, and when they are, they're sometimes transitive. But then if we go to the 2024 data, Luca has more than doubled in its transitive verb use and its verb use, and Uta has significantly increased in its transitive verb use and also increased some in its verb use. So we can see that this change has definitely happened. And yeah, so on this Ilonasin page that I sent out a little bit ago, you can also go to this charts page and make your own versions of these charts. So let's say I want to look at like Mapona data from 2020 and 2024, and I want to highlight the word like pu. Oh, this is interesting. Pu is right here in the 2020 data, and it's right here in the 2024 data. So what does this mean? In 2020, pu was used like relatively frequently, like 33%-ish as a noun and like 30%-ish as a verb. It was relatively even between that. But then in 2024, pu moved all the way down here where it's only used like maybe 21, 22% as a noun, and also less so as a verb. I think that the reason this is true is because in these 4 years, it became much more encouraged to refer to Toki Pona, the language of good, in Toki Pona as lipupu, rather than just the word pu on its own. So we have this like kind of social pressure to use pu as lipupu rather than a word on its own, uh, changing the usage of this word over time. And we can see, oh, it moves, it moves, it moves. And it's slowly been like moving and finding its way down here from the 2020 data. Another instance of change, not really change, but another thing that I noticed and validated with this data is just standalone interjections. So my parser is also able to see, oh, if there's no like li or verb in the sentence, then it's probably an interjection. And so we can see like, oh, pona as an interjection and pretty much all words as an interjection are used way, way, way more frequently in like informal conversation, which makes a lot of sense because interjections are often just used for acknowledgments or really simple things that you want to like reply to someone or like exclaim something. And that's definitely more conversational. But what's interesting to me is Wawa as an interjection has risen a ton in the past 4 years in this like informal corpus. We can see it's maybe around 7% in 2020, and then that goes all the way up to like 25%. One in four instances of the word Wawa are its use as an interjection, which I think is really cool. Um, Oh yeah, let's look at some other instances of change. So another one that I thought was interesting was kepeken. So kepeken, if we go and look at the verb, let's see, actually, I think it would be verb and preposition map. Okay, this is kind of a goofy map, maybe total. Yeah, okay. So out of, let's look at the x-axis. Gepeken is used as a preposition now 70% of the time in 2024, but in 2020 it was used as a preposition like 60-ish percent of the time, and it was also used as a verb more. So we can see that this is also some more evidence that Kepeken e has fallen out of fashion, and Kepeken as a prepositional verb is more common than it was before. So we can validate a lot of the feelings of like language change in Tokipona with some of this like numerical quantified data like this. Cool. So just some like significance that I think that this has. Uh, First is just that we can use this to validate the fact that even this designed system of language can naturally evolve as communities use them, which means that like this social aspect is just like a fundamental quality, some fundamental property of human language use. Also, These longer written works tend towards more conservative grammatical patterns, which kind of mirrors like patterns found in English formal and informal writing in online spaces. Some future things that I'd like to do with this is replicating some other studies. So with this corpus and with this like parsing tool, I think it'd be really interesting to see if other English patterns persist in Toki Pona. So one of my professors in the fall semester wrote a paper on how subjective adjectives are likely to be predicative, whereas more objective adjectives are more likely to be attributive. So in the sentence, the red dress is cute, the red is a more objective quality that people can agree on. So it's more likely to modify a noun, but the word cute is more subjective. So it's more likely to be, you're more likely to say something is cute rather than say the cute dress is red. And it'd be really interesting to look at like subjectivity in Tokipona and see if that also mirrors the predicative versus attributive uh, like uses of these words. Some other stuff is like proactive data collection. Kalaasi sent out a series of surveys looking at, I believe, like verbs and like case assignment and stuff like that, which is really cool. And I think any more proactive data collection stuff would be really interesting. Also, just analyzing spoken Tokipona in addition to written would be cool, but there's just much less data on that, and so it's harder to find conclusions about single words where you need like hundreds or thousands of uses of those single words to actually get any meaningful like changes over time. So those are some like challenges or interesting things that I'd be looking at in the future. Oh, another thing is like uh, I sent a I sent a paper that I wrote on this into the UGA Working Papers at Linguistics journal. And so if that peer review gets like passed and stuff, that would be like a peer-reviewed paper about Toki Pona thing, which I think is pretty cool. I think having this kind of stuff is nice because it can give like Toki Pona more legitimacy in academic spaces. So I'm just excited about that. Cool. So um, anyone with questions in chat? Uh, oh, there's not a copy of my paper on archive or arxiv or however you say that. I can send one in the Discord. Or I've sent this in the Discord before, but I should publish it somewhere. I think after this talk, I can link to this paper on this website. Uh, yes, I think that would make it like pretty accessible there. Let's see. Oh yeah, let's look at another few things. Kipisi and Kama. So let's look at Kipisi, right? This is another thing that I looked at, which let's look at this chart again. So we can see Kipisi is used. Actually, let's look at this graph right here. So Kipisi in 2020 was used like maybe I don't know, 18% as a noun, and then that's increased all the way to 28% as a noun. So we can see some drift from KPC being used to like cut things apart to actually like referring to divisions or something as a noun. What are some other things like kama as a transitive verb? Let's look at the transitive verb graph again. We can see kama was used like maybe 30, a little over 30% as a transitive verb in 2020. That goes all the way up to like 45% in 2024. So there's a lot of different changes. You guys are all free to look at these graphs yourself and highlight different words to see those changes. Uh, cool. Mi awen lon tempo lili. Tawa ni Yandi wile sona yo sin la o toki la weekend looking di toki tawa sina. Pona. Ah, Toki Pona ale sinali. Pona e pilin mi. Pona. Nila, mi pini e toki. Ah, Tempo kama la, jan sonja li kama li toki tawa sinale.